Okay. Today's we are going to see a chapter 2 psychology freshman course, uh, sensational perceptions. As previously we see the definitions of psychology, school of psychology, and also the research methods, the perspectives of psychology, ghastly psychology, structural perspective, functional perspective, psychoanalysis, psychodynamics, etc. We see behaviorals, we see humanistics, we already see a lot of things in Unit 1. Right now, we come to see the sensations and the perceptions. What is the sensation means, what is and also perception means in chapter 2. Then we will dig out to that and also we will covers all of these things in uh, these parts. Okay, so chapter 2, as I already mentioned, the sensations and the perceptions. Okay, what is the sensations and what is the perceptions? Okay, let's start by this is by the questions. Have you ever heard of saying like you watched but you don't see, you hear but you don't listen, you touch but you don't grasp? So, what is the difference between these questions? What do you see in these questions? You watch but you don't see. What is the difference between watch and see? What's the difference between hear and listen? What the difference between touch and grasp? If you know this, we will come to answer. We can answer the meanings of sensation and perceptions. So, which one do you think refers to sensation? Which one refers to perceptions? So let's feel free to answer this. You can pause and answer. But when I answer it, like the sensation part is watch. When we say watch, it's just normally everything that we watch around ourselves. But when we say perceptions, when we say see means focusing in one things, focusing that things, and also defining that things in meaningful patterns. So if we do this in our day-to-day environment, we are perceiving something if we see. But if you watch, we just sense something. The difference is that we didn't perceive some things. We didn't give that things a math pattern of meaningful pattern in our minds. So he didn't covers in our minds. Just uh, so this is the meanings of sensational perceptions. So the basic terms that we have to see and also have to remember that the basic concept in this unit that I want to you to bear in your mind is a stimulus. What is a stimulus means? What is response means? What is sensation means? What is transduction means? What is perception means? What is psychophysics means? So I want to build these basic terms in your mind. So let's start the concept of sensational perceptions. How the things in the environments or how the things in this natural phenomena come to the meaningful patterns in our minds. So the first thing is that we have to raise is stimulus energy. What is the stimulus energy? Stimulus energy is uh, is the stimulus, okay? The stimulus, and also that helps the sensory receptors to sense everything in our minds and also in our body. So like light, sound, smell, as you see here, is the stimulus energy. After the stimulus energy is we receive the then the next part is sensory receptors like eyes, ears, nose, then it comes to neural impulses. So after the neural impulses, there is afferent and the efferent neural impulses. We then have afferent neural impulse to the come to the efferents to the our brain visually, auditory, olfactory area. So in the brain, so the sensations is from the stimulus energy to the perceptions in our mind. It converted to the meaningful patterns. So if we see this, this is the concept of energy transductions. What does that means? That means energy transduction means the conversions of energy from one things to another things. So when we sense some things in our environment, in our phenomena, in our surroundings, that is the basic concept we have to raise is there is an energy out there. There is an energy, maybe light wave, maybe light energy, maybe sound energy, maybe heat energy, maybe etc. There is a lot of energy out there. So maybe electrical energy, maybe magnetic energy. There is so many energy after there. So this energy is converted to sense. We have to convert this energy. For example, without light energy we can't see. Without sound energy we can't hear. We can't feel anything. So we can't sense anything. So the energy is very great concepts we have to know in our minds. So the sensation is this part. So the concepts, the basic definitions of sensations is stimulations of receptor cells in the sensory system send nervous impulse to the brain. Is the process whereby stimulations of receptor cells in the sensory system need send nervous impulse to the brain. So this is the concept of sensations. So for example, colors, brightness, the pitch of the tone, or bitter taste. These are the concept of sensation. The starting point of sensation is a stimulus. The starting point of the sensation is a stimulus. For example, from the energy such light waves or sound waves that can affect sensory organs such as eyes or ears. So the starting point of sensation is stimulus. As I described, the stimulus is energy out there. For example, lights. For example, sound. For example, heat, etc. That energy that surround us, that's we call it stimulus. Without stimulus, there is no sensing. Without sensing, no perceiving. So without stimulus, there is no sensations. Without sensations, there is no perceptions. So we have to know this. So perception is the process that organizes the sensation to meaningful patterns. After we sense things, for example, there is by our for example by our tongues we can taste, by our eyes we can see, by our ear we can hear, by our nose we can smell, etc. By our hands we can touch, grasp things. So this is sensations. After we sense these all things, then it must be changed to the meaningful pattern in our mind. That is perceptions. So the difference between sensations and perceptions is this. So right now let's raise and so let's come to the concepts of the sensory law. So as we see before the definitions of sensory and perceptions, let's proceed to the sensory law. The first law we have to see is sensory threshold. Sensory threshold. What is the sensory threshold means? Sensory threshold means the minimum point of intensity a sound can be detected. So as I described here, the sensory threshold, the sensory law, as the sensory law indicate, the sensory threshold is the minimum point of intensity of sound can be detected is sensory threshold. So for example, minimum of intensity of sound can be detected is sensory threshold. There are two laws of sensory threshold: law of absolute threshold, law of difference threshold. So for law of absolute threshold is one of the thing, law of difference threshold is one of the thing. So we have to know these concepts. So the second thing is that the what is the absolute threshold? The minimum amount of stimulation of person can be detected is absolute threshold. For example, absolute threshold single candle from 30 miles 14 kilometers on a clear night. The tick of watch from 20 feet 6 meters in tall quiet. Smell one drop of perfume in 6 room apartment. The wing of pea on check dropped from 1 centimeter. 1 teaspoon sugar in gallon, 77.7 liters of water. So difference in threshold, the minimum amount of change that can be detected. So it is the minimum of amount of change that can be detected. That's the difference between differential threshold and absolute threshold. Sensory adaptations. Another concept we have to raise in sensory law is sensory adaptations. If stimulus remain constant in intensity, you will gradually stop noticing it. So, for something stimulus remain constant in intensity, you will gradually, you are adapting that things. So gradually you stop noticing it. Tendency of our sensory receptor to have decreasing responsiveness to unchanging stimulus. So it decreases our responsiveness, tendency of our sensory receptors. So our receptors, our sensory receptors in our body have tendency to decreasing responsiveness to unchanging stimulus. So this must be to be responsive, it must be changed. So for unchanging it decreased responsiveness. So this is the sensory adaptations. What about habituations? Habituation means pattern decreased response to stimulus after frequently repeating exposures. So habituation means is a frequently repeated exposures. Adaptation means unchanging stimulus. So the difference is this: for the adaptation it's unchanging stimulus, for the habituations it is frequently adapted things. So this is the difference between habituation and adaptations. So attribute of sensations, as I already mentioned before, sensory deprivation is the attribute of sensations. Sensory deprivation is the absence of normal levels of sensory stimulations. What is sensory deprivation? The absence of normal level of sensory stimulation is sensory deprivations. Sensory overload means is the experience of too much. Okay, so sensory deprivations, attribute of sensations, sensory deprivation, and the second one, sensory overload. So, as I already mentioned before, this is an experiencing too much amount of stimulus from the environment. This is also bad for the brain to function properly. So, sensory deprivation is also very bad for our body sensations. Sensory overload also very have a problem, have a great problem in our mind and also in our body. So we have to now the concept of sensory deprivation, sensory overload. Let's come to the perceptions. So as I already mentioned, the perception is the changing of converting the sensations into the meaningful patterns. Right now, what's the characteristics of perception? The first one thing is that we have to raise and also we have to now is selectivity of the perceptions. So what is the selectivity of these perceptions? So the selectivity of perceptions, the first thing is that we have to raise is attentions. Okay, what's the attention? Let's see right now. Sense organs is bombarded by many stimulus. Perceived few of them. Ignoring the other unnecessary stimulus is attentions. So the perceptual process that selects certain puts for the inclusions in unconscious experience or awareness at any given time is ignorance of others is attention. So selective the perception is attention. So let's come to the factors influencing perceptual selectivity. There is two ways. The first thing is that external attention factors. The second things are internal seat factors. The external seat factors for the attentions is intensity. Within intensity, you will increase or you will decrease your attention. The second thing is size. Within a size, you will increase or you will decrease your attention. The third things are contrast. Within a contrast, you will maybe increase or you might be decrease. Repetitions. Within a repetition, maybe you will increase or you will decrease. Within emotions, maybe you will be have a great attention, maybe you will not have that. Novelty and familiarity, also like that. Internally, there is four things are mentioned: learning, expectations, motivations, and personality affects attention. So we have to decide to know these things. So this is the things that we have to raise to see the parts and also to see the characters of perceptions. The second thing I have to raise is the perceptions as organization and structures. Perceptions, everything we perceive as sound, structures, and forms. Everything we perceive as sound, structures, and forms. To make sense out of what we perceive, we must know where one thing begins and another ends. So the process of dividing up the world occurs effortlessly, naturally, make our perception more meaningfully. So, principles of law of perceptual organizations. The brain uses structures in order to give pattern, shape, form to our visual perception. It's based on these principles that perceptual organization become possible. The Gasteiz law of organization are principles that describes how organized contrast piece formation to meaningful words. Gasteiz psychology said, the whole is more than the sum of its parts. 4. The things figure ground perception. The perceptions of objects from everyday experience are standing out from the background. This is the principle by which we organize perceptual field in stimulus that stand out, the figure, and those that are felt over the ground. So, this is Gasteiz principles. The principle of similarity is the second thing. The perceptions contrast under change sensory informations. Perception does not change any when sensory information about stimulus change. Our perceptual hypothesis remain the same when information we receive about the stimulus through the visual sense organ changes in color. So, categories of perceptual constancy. The first one is the size constancy. The second one is the shape constancy. The third one is color constancy. The fourth one is location constancy. The fifth one is, so there is force. So after that there is perceptions or illusions. What's the perceptual illusions? Illusions are special perceptual experience in which information arising from external stimulus lead to incorrect perceptions or false impressions of objects or even from which stimulus comes. So the two illusions are there: auditory illusions because of sound, optical illusions because of light. Thank you so much.